Alrighty, welcome back, boys and girls. It's your main math man, Mr. Shank, coming to you live from Summit Academy. And in this video, we're still working on that number 4 for that Unit 2 competency. And what we're going to be working with is this. So we're trying to say, it says this. It says study the information of the 3 functions. So it gives you 3 different functions, 3 quadratics in their different forms. So again, we have our first one is a table of values. G of x is an equation in intercept form, so where it hits the x-axis, and our last one, h, is in standard form for a quadratic. And so what we're going to do is several different parts, but what we can do is take it one part at a time. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to pull up my Desmos calculator, if it will let me. Pull up my Desmos calculator. There we go. I'm going to type in some of our functions. So let me show you. I can say my first function, I know it goes through the points. So let's have when I know it goes through the points. Let me show you guys what I'm looking at here. So let's say if I'm looking at my function, I can say, hey, I know when x equals 0, my y value is 5. However, what I'm going to use is I'm going to use these 2 points where my function, meaning f of x, I'm going to say where that is equal to 0, because that's just saying like when y equals 0, we have our x-intercepts. And so I need to take the opposites of 1 and positive 5. So let me do just that. So I'm going to say in my function, or excuse me, in my equation, I can say y equals, and then I have, in parentheses, I have x minus 1 times x minus 5. And that works out because if you look at the key parts of your function, you're saying, hey, I have that y-intercept at 0, 5. I have my vertex, which should be switched around, should be 3, negative 4. So let me actually change that in there for you guys before I forget. So that should be 3, make that smaller, and negative 4. Okay, so it goes to the point 3, negative 4, and it goes to that point on our x-axis. We have point of 1, 0 and 5, 0. So that way we know some of these ordered pairs for our function. And so I'm going to type out my other ones as well. I'm going to have, let's have a g of x. So let's actually label these carefully. Let me say, so let's label them f of x. Oh man. About now. There it is. So we have f of x. We got g of x is going to be equal to, we have 1/2, negative 1/2. And we have times x minus 10 and x plus 4. Then notice how, it's going to be, these are going to be different graphs for each of them. That's okay because we can solve it carefully. And then h of x, we're going to say is equal to, and then we have 2x squared. We can say plus 12x plus 20. So 20. Okay. So several graphs going on with that, but we can take one of them at a time and list those key features. So let's do that. So I'm going to list key features of f of x first. So let's do this. So let me show you our function. Okay. So I'm going to say, so we have our equation, and what else do we need? We need our key features. So what are those again? So my key features of f of x are going to be as follows. We're going to have my x-intercepts are going to be at 1, 0 and at 5, 0. So I have those 2 x-intercepts. My y-intercept is going to be when x equals 0. So I have the order pair 0, 5. My vertex, meaning my lowest point, or my highest point, which in this case it's the lowest, so I have to label it as a min, is going to be at the point 3, -4. And then my vertical stretch or shrink, meaning look at that value for A in that equation. What's our leading coefficient? It's just 1. Now, if we are looking at our graph of our function g of x, again, remember you can click on the tool next to it and it will highlight or unhighlight it. But what I can do is I can say, all right, excuse me, the points that I have -4, 0, 10, 0, and 0, 20 for my intercepts, and then I have that vertex is going to be a max. So let me change it back over. All right. So excuse me, when I'm looking at my key features of g of x intercepts at -4, 0, 10, 0, and then I have a y-intercept at 0, 20, so wherever it hits the y-axis. My vertex, meaning in this case, since it has a leading coefficient that's negative, we have a max. It has the N shape. It's going to be at the point 3, 24.5. And then we're going to say our vertical stretch or shrink is going to be equal to -1/2, since that's that leading coefficient. And lastly, we can kind of look at our key features for h of x. So as you're looking at your function, you can kind of trace some of these key points. So I'm going to say I have a key point at -3, 2. That's going to be our vertex. We have a key point at 0, 20. That's going to be our y-intercept. And if you notice, look how it does not hit the x-intercept anywhere. So that means that we're going to have no real roots for our x-intercept. So what it looks like is this. I'm going to say, all right, key features. Again, no real roots for x-intercepts. Y-intercept is 0, 20. We have vertex and min this time, since we have that U-shape at -3, 2, and our leading coefficient is going to be 2. So kind of make sure you have these key features. Again, it says to pick one. I gave you 3, so at least pick one of those options to move on from. So now it says in part, so we did part A. In part B, it says compare and contrast key features of G and H. So we're going to say, all right, G and H. So as we're looking at our two functions, G and H, we can kind of compare the two graphs that we have. Again, be able to select and deselect your two options, but we're looking at those two graphs. And so now we're saying this. If I compare my two functions, I can say, okay, I have H and G. I'm going to say that they both, something that they have in common is that they both have y-intercepts at 0, 20. Some differences they have are as follows. We can say H opens upwards, meaning it has that U shape, and G opens downwards, meaning it has that N shape. We can also say the leading coefficient are inverses and opposites, since we have -2 and, -1/2 and +2. So those are inverse and opposites of each other. Now looking at our part C, we're looking at the two functions f and h. Again, be able to kind of highlight or deselect the ones that you need. So we're talking about the teal and pink ones. So we're now looking at these two functions, f and h. And so we're going to say our key features are as follows. Again, since I found all three, I can kind of isolate them one at a time. But I can say this. I can say, all right, comparing f and h, both have positive y-intercepts. Both have a minimum vertex, meaning that U shape, and the reason why they have that is because that leading coefficient for both are positive. So we have +2 and +1. So again, both of them kind of just compare those key parts and see what you can say. And lastly, for that part D, we can say if we're looking at these two graphs, we're trying to compare and contrast and ask what Julian's saying. So Julian wants to just reflect and divide it by 100, but we need to say this. We need to say, if we're looking at our setup, we can say this. Well, I disagree with Julian, and then we could say why. We would need to translate G up before reflection over the x-axis, and we would need to change the leading coefficient to be 1/2, not 100. And so it can kind of look something like this. Let me switch back. So as we're looking at our option. So when I make that reflection, it's going to be positive. And notice how it's still below. So we need to translate it up. So I'd have to hit like plus, let's say 25 maybe. Notice how it matches up a little bit better. And we'd say if we need to have 1/2, again, notice how it kind of gets a little closer. So as you are shifting your graphs around, you can kind of change and make sure you're changing them appropriately. So maybe even, say 25 is too far, maybe 23, 22. So in between 23 and 22 is where you need to shift it, but you wouldn't need to change it by that much. So again, make sure you can follow each of those steps. Again, be able to compare the different functions, find those key features first, and then compare. Be sure to ask questions, and as always, super slam that subscribe button.